When today's guest emailed me and said, I have a story I could tell you, I read what he wanted to talk about and I thought, that sounds fascinating. And then I talked with him. And now I am content to sit here, quite warm and toasty, in the safety and comfort of my home and my sofa and my wife's quilt, and never, ever, ever go out in the snow again. I'm Brian Johnson.
And this is Nobody You Know. Hello and welcome to Nobody You Know. I'm your host, Brian Johnson, and my guest today is Mr. Chris Larson, whom I know almost nothing about. We connected online. I think you're one of the first people to actually write to me and say you were willing to be on the show. Most of the time, I am pulling teeth. And I think your primary highlight was your climbing, hiking, exploring hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to be into mountaineering quite a bit. You know, the older I get, the better I was. You know, I grew up in Michigan, and mostly there I only could climb trees. And then, but I was a hippie, and I hitchhiked around the United States quite a bit. And as I got exposed to the mountains, you know, I wanted to hike up them more and more, and because I liked being on top, and the view was the initial thing. And then when I moved to Alaska, I ran into some. Well, even before I moved to Alaska, I worked at a camp for juvenile delinquents in Massachusetts, where we taught climbing skills, rope handling skills, and did some rock climbing with them, not any serious mountaineering or anything. So I had those skills, but then when I moved to Alaska, I made friends with two guys that were big into mountaineering and had quite a bit of experience, and they mentored me for quite a few years, and we did some climbs together. As a matter of fact, this one that we're going to talk about was with one of them. It was on Mount St. Elias. Mount St. Elias sits on the border of Canada, Alaska, right where the southeast arm extends down from Alaska towards Juneau. And became interested in St. Elias because if you start at sea level, it's the longest climb in the world as far as big mountains. Mm-hmm. So at sea level, it would be an 18,000-foot climb. Like on Mount Everest, you know, you start at 18,000 feet and climb to 27, you know. So that's only a 9,000-foot climb.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that was our goal, and we found a bush pilot that would fly us in and land us on the glacier, and he had never done that before. He'd been flying hunters in, and so as we're coming in for a landing, you know, on this bumpy, snowy glacier, he's going, well, what do you think? We're going, you're the pilot, and you're asking us, what do we think? And his lack of experience soon showed up because he landed on the glacier, and it was right down there close to the ocean, but he landed and he just kept the plane facing uphill. And so we opened the door and probed for crevasses, and then once we had an area secured, we got out and unloaded our gear, and then we stood back. And as he went to take off, he fired up his engine, and the snow was kind of soft, and as he got going forward, as he made his turn, he just sunk his left wing right into the snow. So there's three of us standing on a glacier with a plane on its side, and it took us about an hour and a half to get him out and get him turned down slope.
Wow.
But the snow was so soft, as he took off, it was just whoom, whoom over these bumps. There was a crevasse field about a mile down the glacier, and John and I were mentally trying to lift him up as he's going through this soft snow. And just as he gets to the crevasse field, he's able to pick up about 5 feet above the snow and just go with the pitch of the glacier and finally get enough speed to start rising up. Then he radios us and goes, you guys need to pack a runway or I'm not coming back.
I was going to say, it kind of dampens your hope of getting back out.
Yeah. Just went probably about 10 days to get to our high camp. And then as we got there, we were sitting on a ridge that come down from Mount St. Elias. And so on our left is 2 miles of St. Elias going up. And then there's a flat valley.
Two miles?
Yes.
Just going up.
10,000 feet still.
Wow.
And then there's
that makes my hikes look like nothing. I'm going to back up just a little bit. I know what a crevasse is, but just kind of describe a glacier with crevasses then. I mean, we've got this ice flow, and you've got to find a way over...
So glaciers, as most people know, are rivers of ice.
Right.
And they're hard on top, but with all that weight, they're more like plastic on the bottom, so they flow. And so then as a glacier goes over a rise, the crevasses open up. And as it goes through a dip, they close back up.
So it's going this way, and it actually starts to form these cracks.
As it goes over a rise, because the top of the ice wants to go forward. And then as it goes through a dip, they close back up. So these are the safe places to camp down in the concave area rather than a convex area.
All right, good. That gives me kind of a mental image. All right, so now we're back to the base of Mount Elias here.
And one time when John and I were trying to find our way through this crevasse field, we came to a big crevasse, and it was literally 40, 50 feet wide, and we skied up till our ski tips were over, and we looked over the edge, and we could not see the bottom. Man. It went from blue to indigo to black. You could have drove a 50-car freight train in there and never seen the wreckage. It must have been a mile deep.
I'm sitting here on a perfectly comfortable sofa, and my fear of heights is kicking in. I guess so. Before we move on, what's the strategy there? You go around, you go over. I don't know.
So, and that particular crevasse, it actually went right to a vertical rock wall, and we thought we might have dead-ended. But as we went back to the right after about 3/4 of a mile, there started to be some snow bridges, and the crevasse kind of narrowed up, and we were able to find routes across. Some of those pictures show a pretty good example of what we were trying to weave our way through. And so after 2 weeks, we get to the high camp, and we've got St. Elias. It rises 10,000 on the left, and about a mile of wide glacier in the valley and Mount Newton rises up about a mile on the right. And as we're sitting in our high camp, we're noticing avalanches are coming off in the day, and some of them start at the top of Mount St. Elias, and they come ripping down, and they go all the way across that mile-wide valley, and 2/3 of the way up Mount Newton. And we're going, boy, I'd hate to be in there right now. And then we go, yeah, but that's where we're going. And so we spent 2 days trying to figure out the pattern, and we did it. We found it. The pattern was that when the sun came up in the morning and hit the ice started to expand in the sunlight and then would start cracking off.
Okay.
And then as the sun moved around and hit different patches of ice, they would expand and pieces would crack off. But also, as the sun left the ice and it began to cool down, it would compress, and that would also cause it to crack, and avalanches would break off. So these weren't slab avalanches; they were ends of glaciers that were breaking off. And the pattern was that after 1 o'clock at night, because this is summer in Alaska and lots of daylight, the sun is down, the temperature is stabilized, and the avalanches have quit from about 1 o'clock in the morning until about 6 in the morning when the sun first hits the peaks again.
So you have a 5-hour window.
We have a 5-hour window, and at this point in our lives, we're big, strong guys. I'm 31, and my partners are experienced mountain climbers, and they're all really strong. And we're looking at this, and we go, we can easily cross this flat stretch of glacier and get to the head wall and climb that head wall in 5 hours because we're animals.
Beast mode. Yeah.
So we get up on that morning and we start across the glacier. But what we didn't realize is now the snow is literally up past our knees, even with skis on.
Oof.
And so that's slow. And I was the initial leader, and I thought, boy, I'm going to set a good pace. But all I could handle was about 5-10 minutes. Stepped aside and let the next person lead. And so with all this deep snow, we aren't making it across the glacier in an hour. We're making it across that glacier in literally 4 hours before we get to the head wall. And now we've got an hour to get up the head wall, and the snow on the head wall is deep. So we park our skis at the bottom because we had skins on them, but they're useless for going up through the deep snow.
Okay.
And we got these packs on, and we got ice axes, and we're just post-holing up this head wall, probably 5,000 feet that we have to go, and it's incredibly slow going. And so by the time we're supposed to be up there, we're just getting started, and the sun hits Mount St. Elias.
Now, let me try to picture it. So you had to get through a valley.
Mm-hmm. So
Straight ahead. Okay, go ahead.
St. Elias is over here, Mount Newton's over here,
Mm-hmm.
and there's this valley. Between Mount Newton and St. Elias is what climbers call a col.
Okay.
It's a connecting ridge.
Okay.
And what our goal was to get to the low point of that col, and the next day we would try to summit
Okay.
St. Elias.
So if you could get up onto that thing, you were out of the avalanches
Right.
that would be happening between the two peaks.
Right.
Okay. All right.
But the snow was so deep, we're really late, and we've already committed. And so now the sun is starting to hit St. Elias, and little avalanches are going across, but they're going behind us. But we know as the sun moves around, it's going to get more, start hitting the ice pieces above us. And so we climb, and we just keep pushing, and we keep changing leads, and we're just pushing and exhausting ourselves. We skipped lunch at noon. At 11:15, the sun had cracked off a big avalanche up to our left, and it looked like it was coming towards us, and we all drove our ice axes in the snow and laid down. It went about 100 feet to our left, and we kept pushing, and finally about 2:30 we are exhausted, and we've come to the Bergschrund.
And this is PM now?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've come to the Bergschrund, and the Bergschrund is a crevasse, but it's between ice and rock. It's where the glacier has started to pull away from the mountain.
Okay.
And so there's rock here, there's ice here, and then there's a snow overhang over this, and we can kind of stand under it and get out of the sunlight. And so we've got to eat, and so we get out some food, and we're eating, and we're looking at this Bergschrund and how are we going to get across it and get around this overhang. And there's a snow bridge about 20 yards to our left, and so we decide that John and I will try to test this snow bridge. If we can get across that, then we can probably in a couple more hours will be on the col. And so we go over there, and the snow is still up past my thighs, and I'm downhill from the crevasse, and John is crossing the snow bridge, and I've got a rope around me, and I'm belaying him on this rope, and I'm just kind of kneeled in the snow because there's no way he's going to drag me in a 60-pound pack up a hill. I don't have to lock in or anything. And as he's crossing, his foot goes through at one point, but he's probing and he gets across the snow bridge. But because his foot went through, he turns around, or he takes the time to dig himself a pit where he can get in and put his feet up like this and put the rope around him, because I'm going to be downhill from him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says to me, "Okay, on belay." And as soon as he says that, then Scott yells, "Avalanche."
Oh, man.
I looked up, and the avalanche is coming off of St. Elias, but it's off to our left, but it's coming towards us, but I know there's a big valley, a big chute in between, and I'm thinking to myself, that it's going to turn when it hits the chute. And so I looked down and I grabbed my Instamatic camera that was hanging around my neck, and I brought it up when I got about this far, and the avalanche was bigger than I thought, and when it hit that valley, it just exploded up in the air. It didn't stop its forward momentum. And so now we've got just this massive white cloud of ice and snow that is rising up above us. Everybody else is scrambling back under the overhang, but I'm down slope, and the snow is this deep, and I got a 60-pound pack on, and I can't get up there fast enough. And John's telling me, jump in the crevasse, and I can't even get that far. So I took my ice axe and I drove the shaft into the snow, and I have a metal frame backpack with bags strapped on it, and I laid down on my stomach with my ice and hanging onto my ice axe.
Is this standard emergency posture? Grab onto something that won't move and
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a standard for avalanches. If you're out there, you do what you think is best.
Okay.
And so I was just hoping to hold on, but when that ice river hit me, it jerked me out of the snow, and this scar here on my hand is from the ice axe. The adze of the ice axe cutting my hand as I get jerked out of the snow, and then it tears me down slope, and then I hit the end of the rope, and I'm head down now with my feet upslope, and this 100-mile-an-hour ice river is just banging the daylights out of me, running over the top of me. And later talking to John, he's in there in his pit, holding onto that rope. He's flying me like a kite in this ice river out there. And the backpack is protecting my head and my back from these chunks of ice and just ripping over the top of us and, just battering the daylights. And I was sure I wasn't going to survive it. And then it went by us and it was gone, and I'm laying under probably 6 inches of snow, just laying there going, I'm alive. I'm still alive. And I hear him start calling. I go, John, yeah. Bill, yeah. Scott, yeah. Julie, yeah. Chris. And so I push myself up out of the snow, and I stand up, and my hand is dripping blood, and I'm in shock. I'm dazed.
Yeah.
And that picture shows me kind of leaning to the side, and they go, don't move. And so they all grab their cameras and they run down and they and they start taking these pictures of me with this massive ice pile behind me, because where I am, I'm fine. I'm under 6 inches of snow. If I was 10 feet over there, I would be under tons and tons of ice.
Oh, wow.
And so this is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And my wife had gone to church that morning and come home. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the head elder of our church called her and said, have you heard from Chris? And she said, no, it's been a couple weeks. We expected it to be 3 weeks or so. And he goes, I think we should be praying for him right now. And so at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when we were being slammed by that avalanche, my wife and the head elder of the church were back in Valdez praying for us.
Very nice.
And so that probably made the difference. We lost Julie's backpack that had been carried away by the avalanche, and so we knew we were ready to leave now. We were all beat up.
You're not talking me into mountaineering with this story.
Yeah. There's a famous climbing doctor lived in Valdez with us, and he had given us some 00 needles and some morphine, and so they were able to get one stitch through my hand, and we had a bunch of Keflex antibiotic, but it took us 4 days to weave our way back down through the crevasse field to the landing site.
Wow. I can't imagine. I can hear your story, and I'm actually getting a sinking feeling sitting here imagining the sounds and the feeling and all of that, but to actually be there, that's not something you're ever going to forget.
No.
Well, I'm sitting here quite comfortably on a sofa in a perfectly ordinary living room, but listening to and imagining that story actually gave me chills down my spine, and it's not something I ever want to live, but thank you for sharing that adventure from your life. This is Nobody You Know, and if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you click the like button on this video, and then if you enjoy the channel as a whole, click the subscribe button, and then the little bell that gives you a notification every time I upload a new video, which, when everything goes right, is every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I've been doing this for 26 episodes now. I will get that right someday. If you would like to be on the program yourself, send me a note at 10thandfur@outlook.com. Chris is the first person to actually take me up on that particular avenue of communication. I've used Facebook, I've used nextdoor.com, I've used all kinds of things, and Chris actually wrote to me by email like I've been asking people to do. So as this program gets off the ground, hopefully we can get your story on it. If you don't think you have something to talk about, you are wrong. Everyone is interesting, and you don't have to be famous to be fascinating. I'm Brian Johnson. This is Nobody You Know, only now you do.